Items I want to touch on. First, I want to say that we had a wonderful time this morning. Sorry, Chris. We had a wonderful time yesterday. We had a cleanup day, and it was just an incredible time to prepare our sanctuary, prepare our overall facility, not just for us, because we want a place where we can come and gather, and you always want to live in a context that's wonderful, but also for our visitors. And I want to thank all those who were present. We covered and did a lot yesterday. And so if you were a part of the activity yesterday, please just raise your hand high. I want you to know it. You better, why don't you stand? Why don't you stand? All those who were present here yesterday and served and labored. Amen. Amen. We had quite a few in the first hour. I want to thank you just for your faithfulness. I also especially want to thank Curtis and Raquel Boyd. Curtis and Raquel, who stand again, please. They coordinate everything. They did a wonderful job. And very, very much. Also now, we're gonna go back a little. Earlier, I believe, at the end of last year, maybe into this year, we were having a testimonial series that we were doing, and it was entitled "Seeing Him." And the reason for that testimonial series is because so often we get to know God. We get to realize who He is, or at least be reminded of His presence by our opportunities to hear what He's doing in the lives of those who are around us. And so we wanted to give various individuals in our body that we had heard of an opportunity to share how God is moving in their life. Opportunities they saw Him through and saw Him in, because it then gives us an opportunity to see Him as well. This morning I'm blessed to invite to share his testimony, how God has moved and guided and worked in the county's life. But He's not just God of the county, He's God of us, for all of us. And I pray that even as we walk through His Word this morning, that wherever you are, wherever you come from, whatever you're bearing, whatever you're carrying this morning into our gathering, that you will allow the Lord to meet you uniquely there. And for some of us, yes, it is a time of struggle. I really appreciated that in William's testimony, especially in your wrap-up statement as well, because we falter, we fail, we sometimes get overwhelmed by what we have to deal with. But He is faithful. He's made an incredible commitment. He said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." And so that tells us that there's always the opportunity to make a U-turn when you walk with the Lord. And so I pray wherever you are this morning, this might be your day to take that step of decision. And before leaving here today, get in right relationship with Him. And if you are, to encourage yourself in the Lord. This morning, as we launch, we're going to continue to walk through the book of Matthew. And this morning, I'm going to point our attention to a section that we now find ourselves in. The book of Matthew is the first of the four Gospels, the very first book in the New Testament. And the section that we're in really is the Sermon on the Mount. And in chapter 5 and in the first 12 verses, we look at the Beatitudes. We look at that which means in the Greek grace and blessing and rejoicing, really, because of that grace and blessing. And so the Beatitudes go from verse 3 all the way down to verse 10. And as you look at these Beatitudes, you see a perspective on what it means to be a follower of Jesus. What it means really to go beyond just saying I'm a follower of Jesus, but to use biblical terms, especially Matthew's terms. What does it mean to be subject to Jesus? What does it mean to have Jesus as king over your life? Because that's Matthew's intent. He's showing us what it means to live in a right relationship in submission to the lordship of who Jesus is. And so his perspective is that as you walk forward, you are to be in a place where you allow Him to be king and for you to then operate in a way that manifests His rule in your life. And so the Beatitudes really show us what the character traits are of a person who is allowing Jesus to be king over their lives. They're not commandments that tell us this is what you should do, this is how you should live, this is what you should stop doing. It's not us trying to become servants, not us trying to live out these character traits. It's us allowing God to move and to guide and to produce these character traits in us. Amen. So really it is more the be attitudes, not the do attitudes. Okay? And so it does hit our character. It does touch our overall perspective and outlook on life. And so as we begin to walk through it, we started last week, we looked at the first one, and we said that sets the stage for all 8 of the Beatitudes. It sets the stage for all 8 of these character traits. And we said that each one begins with this phrase, or this word, blessing, or blessed is. It starts off highlighting this person as being one who is honored, one who should be focused on, rejoice over this one, but also this one should be one who is rejoicing because they have these traits within their lives. We said the first 4 Beatitudes really focus upon those who are needy, those who are in a place where they need something, they are incapable of fulfilling what is going on in their lives and their greatest challenge and need in life. And so the first 4 focus on the needy, the second 4 focus upon the fact of those who are in a position to help others. The first 4 focus upon an attitude, primarily, an outlook, a perspective, a character trait. The second 4, although looking at that, also highlight and emphasize the fact that there are aspects of our will and our decision and actions that take place. The first 4 are given in verses 3 to verse 6. The second 4 are given in verses 7 to verse 10, with verses 11 and 12 looking more so on explaining the last one, the 8th Beatitude, which is given in verse 10. Okay? So giving you that backdrop, talking about, again, what we are now being instructed by Jesus' teaching to look and measure ourselves up and say, how much are we allowing God to move in our lives? How much are we allowing him to have his will and his way in our world? How much are we seeing these character traits be a part of us? I'm going to launch into the second one today. But I want to begin by giving you this perspective. The perspective is this. For many of us, we have grown up in an area and a place, a location, if we've spent enough of our years there, where we come to basically identify so deeply with that area that it becomes outwardly, in many ways, who and how we see ourselves. There are those who live here now who may be coming from the Northeast, who still see themselves as a New Yorker, still sees themselves as a Bostonian, who may see themselves as a New Englander. Someone who somewhere along the eastern seaboard, the northern part of that, still sees and identifies themselves as primarily, that is the perspective on life they bring to life. We have those who are here who sees themselves still, if they grew up in the Midwest, as a Midwesterner, and maybe they're from the Motor City. Maybe they still talk about the sports teams that are there, the schools, or just food that was very unique to that area. There are some of us who are from the West Coast, or maybe from the South, and we are recognized and identified with the culture, the view, the beliefs, the actions that are done in those areas, who we still, as we still see ourselves, we can express that, maybe by wearing an I Love New York t-shirt, or during this last Super Bowl, we saw many who were here were wearing Patriots memorabilia or items to show their allegiance there. Those who are from the West Coast will identify with a team or a city or an area, but they identify it outwardly as being a part of them. But if you scratch the surface a little, if you're around that person, you get to know them a little bit more, you begin to see it's not just outwardly the statements that they made of where they're from. You begin to see actions. You begin to see thoughts and patterns that also express where they're from. Recently, I was speaking to someone, and they were telling me about a sandwich that's here in the South. I had never heard of it, but it's Southern. And it was a collard sandwich. Have anybody ever had one? They exist. I didn't believe it. WRAL News did even a spot on that, and how a church was able to raise enough money for a construction and addition to their church because they had those in that community to come get that sandwich. And so what we eat, what we like, the uniqueness of where we're from, many times if you're around a person, they begin to talk about those things that remind them of home, those things that are uniquely a part of their palate, their diet, you begin to get a perspective on where they're from and who they are. Well, another way you can see that is in driving patterns. I have recently come to learn that there are many who drive with me who do not see me as godly because of the way I drive. And I've got to tell you, that's okay with me. I come from a place, New York City, where you drive like you are going to get or you're going to be gotten. And that means that you cannot wait. You just don't stay around. You just don't let somebody else cut in front of you. You make sure you get there first. Someone won't let you in, you get a little farther, you put your nose in there. You take a risk, but you'll get in. I'm the kind of person, I just got to admit, I admitted it in the first hour, because we'll say it now. And I had people talk to me at the door. I'm the person you see when you see that sign up on the side of the road and it said merge traffic, I stay in the lane that's going to merge. I'm the one that passes you. I'm the one that's waving at you as I go by. Because I will not get over until I absolutely have to. It's okay. It's okay. That's a New York move. That's a big city move. You drive like you were raised to drive. The horn is to be used. That's why they have it in a car. People tell me, I can't believe you passed the bar on that horn. Yes, I want to make sure it works. I paid for that horn. After a while, you're around someone, you begin to see that what they really are exudes from them, comes from them. They may pretend, they may change, they may talk in a certain way, they may get around certain people, though. You begin to see who they really are. You see, the Beatitudes focuses not on the outward implications of what it means to be a follower of Christ. It's not talking about the fact that you come into church. It's not even giving those steps. It's not talking about your giving. It's not talking about how much Bible you're reading. It's not talking about memorization. It's not talking about how you dress. It's not talking about your interaction with others in a specific way. It's saying that there are attitudes that should be growing in you, deep in you, that over time now begin to come out of you. And as people are around you, they should begin to see these attitudes because they are part of your character. Jesus says, when I take over a life, I'm not just putting up a sign outside. I'm not just changing the color of the house. No, I'm doing an overhaul of that home. A full construction from the inside out. And so the Beatitudes reveal that if he isn't working your world, he isn't working your life, and you're allowing him to have his way, King Jesus steps in and rules and changes from the heart out our perspective on life. And so the very first Beatitude we talked about last week, we said that the very first one is that blessed are they who are poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God. Okay? Poor in spirit. We said that's not a financial phrase, a descriptive Jesus is given. Poor in spirit means that you're spiritually poor. You're spiritually bankrupt. You come to God with no pretense that you come on your terms. You're glad that God would accept you. You're glad that God loves you. You're glad that God would have a relationship with you. And so you yield all to him. All to Jesus. All to him I give. Have your way. And that's the perspective that allows you then to walk through life, allowing him to produce and to manufacture within you his desire. And if it is there, then each one of these Beatitudes will be reflected in your world and in your life. And so we looked at the first one. We said that's the standard. That's what begins everything else. Every other Beatitude grows out of that one. And then Jesus now moves on to the next one. The next one is given, and we're going to try to go through the first four, the needy Beatitudes. The ones where the person is expressing great need. Because, again, these have been being written to not just those who hear him. It's being spoken to not just those who hear him as his disciples, but it's being spoken to the first century church, the church that was getting massacred, the church that was going through a martyrdom for their faith. And it wasn't something that was just acceptable that you were Christian. No, you would pay for that with your life. And so as he's communicating this, and Matthew is now communicating this to the next generation of first century Christians, he's letting them know that you have to allow God to have his way. But as you do, you might suffer in some cases because of it. You might not get ahead as much as you want to because of it. But allow him to have his way in you, and you will see the blessings eventually. So the second one comes, and it says this. It says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that's a very challenging beatitude. That's a very challenging perspective. No one
wants to mourn. In most cases, we live in a society that we all want to rejoice. We all want fun. We all want excitement. We all want the euphoria of being picked up. No one wants to be down and continue to just, in a deep state of emotion, carry out feelings of something not being right. It's looking at someone like an Eeyore on Winnie the Pooh, who always has this downward way of speaking. All right, Winnie, I guess we're going to die. Oh, it doesn't look very good. And the mindset that we get with that is that the perspective on life is, it's not what we want. It's not a sunshiny day. It's gray, overcast. It's the wet cold that we just came out of. And none of us want that. There are medications that are offered to take you through that. Why would you want to mourn? Why would you want that as a character trait, a descriptive? Jesus gives that in a very interesting way. He uses a word that is the strongest of words in the Greek to talk about mourning. It's not just saying that it's something you feel, something that is within your private world. He's talking about that which is expressed in a very outwardly way. Those who mourn, and when they do, they expect everybody else to hear it because they don't care. They feel it, and it doesn't matter what you think about it. It's a word that was used of Jacob in the Old Testament. And as he saw his son now dead, as he heard the news of his son's passing, he mourned for Joseph in such a way where it said everybody around him heard it. Everybody around him heard it. He didn't care. And so this kind of mourning is an emotion, a feeling that is very deep to who we are. And literally, as you talk about it, it's connected to really the first beatitude. Because if you have a poor spirit, or you are poor in spirit, then literally it has to manifest itself some way. The first beatitude is the mental. This is how you think about how you are in relationship to God. The second one is emotional. It's a perspective that shapes and guides you as you live it out in your life. In other words, that we would mourn when it comes to the impact of sin in our world. Not only are we poor seeing our own ineptitude, our own bankruptcy when it comes to earning God's love, but we're also poor when we see the effects of sin all around us. When we see it in our own lives. Possibly there's some of us here who came to a week where we struggled again with that very familiar sin, and we didn't come out victorious, but once more we crashed and burned. We failed, and we cry out to God, Lord, when will it end? Many times it's seeing somebody else and someone we love who are struggling in some ways, in some aspect of life, and we mourn seeing them make bad choices again. It's the deep sense of our world being broken. The deep sense that this is not our home forever. The deep sense that there's got to be more, because from what we see, this is really pretty messed up. Last week, hearing about those who would go into a mosque in New Zealand and just slaughter people. Those who would, in the name of religion, say that if you don't believe a certain way, then you're less than, and so your life doesn't matter. We see it when we have someone who would claim to be so great that they would talk about who they are and what they've done, and yet in the midst of them doing it, not caring about suffering around us. My wife comes home and talks about kids at her school, and those who are raised in a context where parents made mistakes, and because of how they were raised, where they were raised, now they're destined in many ways to make the same mistakes. See, mourning is when we get sick and tired of this world, and we want it to change. It says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. If you go to Isaiah chapter 61 and verse 2, it says that Jesus comes, the Messiah would come because he would comfort those who mourn. Can I tell you that if you're walking in a perspective with the King, you realize that this world is not our home. Not only is it not our home, but we're living in a messed up situation. And when we see on the news and when we hear from people who are around us, we desire to see a change. We desire to see comfort. We desire to not have only our own sins change, but the sins of those who are around us. That we would see life change, that we would see perspective change, that we would see people who would have a heart for those who aren't well off, that we would see something come about that would radically transform who we are, how we live, and then touch the lives of others. You know, Jesus beautifully expressed this. It said that he wept at the grave of Lazarus. Have you thought about that? He shows up. He has the power to change the situation, the context. He's going to change the situation and the context. All he's going to do is speak, and everything gets transformed. He's going to tell him to roll the stone away, and he's going to call Lazarus out. But before he does anything, he weeps over Lazarus. Can I tell you, it wasn't just Lazarus? I believe he weeps over the condition of humanity. The fact that men and women, boys and girls, there are moms who would bury their children, the most uninspired, undesired position ever to be in. That you would have someone you desire to spend the rest of your life with, and you stand over their grave in our context, and you wish you had more time. They live in a life of your memory, the life of your remembrance, and yet life is ended. That was never the original intent. And so as Jesus stood before a tomb and cried for our condition, that's mourning. That's mourning that should grip us. Not having us walk around again downtrodden, thinking that there is no beauty in life. No, but it's not getting drunk on life to the point where you think this is the best. Because there's better to come. And he says, if that is a longing in your heart, you will be comforted. Because there's coming a time where all death will end, all sin will end, and there will be a beauty to life that we cannot even fully imagine now. And so the attitude is that we would not get caught up in just where we are and the comforts of life. That we would realize there is so much more. Even for ourselves, we would realize that he will draw close to us, and even in our greatest challenge and struggle with our own inability, his ability would comfort us. So Jesus says, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are bankrupt, realizing they can't earn their way to God, and everything is not in and of themselves, and they now look to God to pay it all and find out how rich they are in him. Blessed are those, for that's the kingdom of God. And then when you get into the kingdom of God, you get so tired of all the other kingdoms, regardless of whatever the political party is, regardless of whatever their promises are, regardless of whatever they tell you they're doing, but you can't see it. And you want a kingdom that's going to come, that's going to comfort you. Not just you, but everybody else. Blessed are you. Rejoicing you should be. Realizing how blessed you are because you see something that most people never can get off the matrix long enough to read. What's number 3? Number 3 is given to us in the next verse. It's given to us in verse 5. It says, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. And you know what I love about Scripture? Scripture has a way of turning everything upside down. Okay? Can I tell you that gentle don't inherit the earth? Can I tell you, it's usually the type A's, the obnoxious ones, the ones that just push their way through, the ones that try, the ones that tout how great they are, the ones who spend more time, you get the conversation with them, and you're there to have them talk to you, and they spend more time talking about them. You ever been around somebody like that? And you're like, oh my goodness, I would hate to live in you. I would hate to be you. I would hate to live around you. I would hate to listen to you. Because it's all about them. And in some cases, those who get ahead, those who are successful, are those who push over people, run over people, push people aside to get to where they want. The gentle don't make it. How in the world do they inherit the earth? It's typically those who are brash, those who are cocky, those who are confident, those who are obnoxious, those who push and think they've got it all worked out. and it's the gentle who gets pushed aside. You know what I mean? Have you seen that? So what in the world is God talking about? Why would Jesus make us say, how blessed are they because they end up being at the end of the line instead of at the front? Well, you see, his perspective again is this. If I'm in charge of you, then there is a trust that you've got to have in me that causes you to approach life differently. That word gentle is a word that also comes out meek, which doesn't make it sound very good. That's not trending today. Meek has the idea of someone who is a milquetoast, someone who is easy, someone who just kind of gets along, gives up, gets pushed around. It's not someone, again, of strength. That's not the word in the Greek. The word that's used here had the understanding of that which was very, very strong, greatly powerful, and so powerful that in and of itself it would wreak havoc. But that power is broken. That power is submitted. It was used of a horse, a stallion, that was powerfully prepared to go out and run wild. And yet, because it was properly broken, properly put into a place and trained to submit its power to someone who's over it, it now has control of itself. And it operates based on the instruction that's given to it. You know, I'm not an equestrian, and I won't pretend to be. I'm not one who has grown up around horses, ridden a lot of horses. I've been on a horse twice, and I still remember the first time I was on a horse. I'd gone to a friend's farm, and they had horses, and we were going to go riding. I said, okay, all right. I seen it on TV. Shouldn't be too hard. Seen it in the movies. Come on now. I remember walking up to the horse and realizing, oh my, this thing's huge. His eyes were big, and it would just look around at you. His face was mammoth. There wasn't fat on this horse. Everything was rippled. He was on steroids. This horse had size and muscle and strength. And you know what? There was another horse, and it was just the same for that one. And so as you walk up to this beast that is huge and high above you, you're realizing, man, I'm going to be on top of you. But then they say mount him. So you get in the straddle, you mount the horse, and then they say, okay, to get it to start moving, take your heel and just kind of hit him on the side and his rib. I'm like, no way. I ain't getting this thing mad at me. Next thing you know, I'm flying through the air. And so I gently tap it, no movement. He said, no, you got to let him know you're ready to go. You got to hit it hard. And so as I went through the process, finally I did it. We started, and we're heading towards a fence, and I realized there's no steering wheel, no brake. What do I do? And so he says, okay, you got the reins, pull it in the direction you want him to go. And I would turn his head and let it go. This mammoth beast was under my control. I weighed nowhere close to his weight. My size did not match his size. If we were in a fist fight, I'd be running. But you know what? He had been broken, he had been molded, he had been submitted to the power that was on top of him, over him. You see, God is not asking you to be less than you are. God is not asking you to now become a milquetoast. God is not asking you, if you have that kind of personality and strength, for you to take it and just throw it away. It doesn't matter. That's not what he's asking you. God is asking you for you to fully develop yourself. God is asking for you to stand for what is right. God is asking you to make sure that you're treated right on the job, in your home, in your community, with your family, with all those who are around you. God is not saying be a doormat, let people walk over. He's not saying be meek and mild. No. What he's saying is being strong, knowing who you are. But blessed are you when you take that strength and you submit it to the will of God. When you do not use it for your own desire. When you are not the one who is in control, doing whatever you want to do. But when you say, God, I submit my life to you. I want to be aware of what you might want to do in my life and through my life and in the situation I find my life in. And the only way that can happen is when I surrender who I am to you. And so he says, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, when is that going to happen, Lord? It may happen in your lifetime where God intervenes, and those who are trying to push you out of the way, those who are more prominent, those who are more obnoxious in their approach, will be pushed aside, and you will reach where you need to go. But what he's saying is, in the end, those who are submitted to me, earth is theirs. You see, today, it's the warlords, it's the politicians, it's the corporate presidents, it's those who have the money who get to choose what's done on the earth. Jesus is saying, here's a time that's coming. If you submit it under my will, you will be the one this earth belongs to. Why? Because in the end, you will reign under me, like you allow me to reign over you now. You see, many times we can give up and think, wait a minute, Lord, wait a minute. They're the ones getting ahead and say, no, just for a season. Just for now. But in the end, the new earth, it will be yours. It will be yours. Can I tell you that may not give you much hope when you got to go to work tomorrow? And you got to see somebody who comes in and knowing they're not acting right, they've got the wrong attitude, and they can't even spell God, and they don't care. But can I tell you, there is hope beyond the present. There is hope that says, let him have his way. You do not know how God will work now. He has a future promise, but he may have a present blessing in the midst of it. He tells you, allow me to guide you. Submit to my will. Be powerful, under control, and let me handle it. Because when I handle it, you will inherit everything you've got coming to you, either now or later. But the meek shall inherit, the gentle shall inherit the earth. One of the things I've realized, it's come quite evident over time, is that there are times where I want to push forward, I want to get upset, I want to speak in strength. But there's a biblical phrase that puts it that way. It says the anger of man do not always come out as the righteousness of God. You can push forward. You can get mad. You can try to let it happen in your own strength. But can I tell you, there is no God in it. Because what I found is many times when your volume, your intensity goes up, your influence goes up. And he says, no, balance it off. Allow me to have my way. Stop trying to force things and let me move. And when I move, I will glorify myself and you will be blessed in the process. Just for something. Let's go to the third one. The third one is given, the last of those who are in need, because you notice each one of these, the poor are those who cannot do it on their own, they're in need. The mourn are those who've lost and therefore realize their own inability and they need to be comforted. The gentle are those who, again, are not the strong and not the powerful. Somebody else has to stand up for them. The fourth is this one. It's given in verse 6. It says, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. That's a need position if there ever was one. Have you ever been hungry? Have you ever been hungry? No, you haven't. Have you ever been thirsty? You don't have a clue. You know, because in our context today, we aren't really hungry. Oh, we say it all the time. Woo! Man, I'm starving. I just ate breakfast, and now it's lunchtime, and I'm ready to eat. Oh my goodness, I'm so thirsty. I just had that bottle of water, and it wasn't enough. Can I tell you, this is not the kind of hunger and thirst he's talking about. He's talking about the hunger and thirst that in parts of our world, there are people who understand that, who haven't eaten in days. In this time period, it was very rare for a Roman worker to have meat. It was a rarity. And so to have that which was filling and could drive you with the protein and the energy needed, it was not that common. The water was not always clean. And so you weren't able to just go and drink on your own choice. And so he's talking about that which was even worse than that in that time. Those who are so emaciated, those who are starving so much that they just dream about food. They just long for a drop of water. Those who hunger and thirst, but he doesn't say food here, he says righteousness. He says righteousness. possibly hungered and thirsted for righteousness. That's just not usually on my menu. I can probably imagine that most Americans, it's not usually a palate desire they have. You know, oh, what should I have? Righteousness. What is righteousness? That's all I want. I don't want anything else. Not in the salad. I just want some righteousness. Well, we don't think that way. You know when we think that way, we come the closest to it? Someone does us wrong. Oh, we're into some righteousness then, aren't we? Oh God, come down and strike this place. Strike this person. Because I should have gotten $1.99 back and I only received 99 cents. Let somebody do you wrong on the job. Let somebody get ahead when you know they shouldn't have. Let somebody not provide what they promised you. We're all about righteousness then. But can I tell you, the word that's used here is all righteousness. Not just personal righteousness, not just our righteousness, but it's the kind of righteousness when we look to see rights proclaimed, right vanquish everything else, right for those who are not in a position where they can even really submit their complaint about what's going on. And he said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for all kinds of righteousness, not just for yourself, but for others, those who are in need, those who can't provide, those who have no clue even what righteousness is because they were raised in a context of unrighteousness. So we hunger and thirst to the time when sexual trafficking will end. We hunger and thirst for the time where smaller countries will not be taken advantage of. We hunger and thirst for the time where those who are immigrants in our country can be used, but not even have a voice. We hunger and thirst for God having his way in our lives. Not just about us. We want him to come and make righteousness the level set. Everything. That everything will be right. And we want it so bad that we feel it. Really, the question that's being asked here is, how badly do you want it? You know, do you want it bad enough that you hunger for it? Do you want it bad enough that you thirst for it? The greatest indicator is how much do you pray for it? See, if you don't even pray for the ills that we see around us, if you don't even pray for right to be made, the standard, then you are not even on the level to even desire it. Jesus says there's so much that's consuming you. You see, because if we don't see the consuming nature of what's going on around us, we never desire in a world that many times gives us what we need, we never desire better. We never desire better. We never desire, come Lord Jesus, and make it all right. We never desire for God to take over. We never desire for everything to be removed and for him to have his way on this earth. On earth as it is in heaven. That's hunger and thirsting for righteousness. And I'm not just saying that, you know, trying to get you to feel down. No, I realize that in my own life. Because many times I'm so comforted. Many times things are so good. Many times I'm just trying to get away from my problems that I forget the all-encompassing righteousness of God. And so his cry is, blessed are all those who want me to rule. It's really what he's saying. Because there will be no righteousness in this world until Jesus fully takes over. And you know, many times we settle for what is best for us. Many times we settle because we kind of compromise the difference between it. And when things work out, we understand how great righteousness is, how great it is to experience grace, but we don't always go in with that perspective. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, during our cleanup time, I had the privilege of working with my dear brother Tom in the back in the AV area, and we were changing out the fluorescent bulbs that were all throughout our building. And as we were changing them out, we realized we didn't have enough bulbs. And so I went across the street and I purchased 2 boxes of bulbs. 30 long fluorescent tubes in these boxes. And they're pretty expensive. They're about $69, $70 for these boxes. And so when we came, I remember they weren't on the bottom shelf and they were up on the top shelves. And so there was a guy who was on a ladder, he got it to me, and he gave me one, and as he was giving it to me, I heard a little bit of a shake. And I was like, oh no. Oh no. You can have that one, you can take it back. I want another box. Because I wanted every bulb. I wanted every bulb in full state. I wanted every bulb without any rattle. I wanted every bulb that could be utilized. I wanted my money's worth. You know what I'm saying? And so he gave me another box. I got it all set. I wheeled it out, got back here. We were working. We were doing our thing. And then we went around the corner. I remember dragging the box with me. And I went around the corner. And as I was putting the box down, I lost it. And it fell. And it had this sound. It sounded like a 4th of July on a box, in a box. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I hope I didn't lose them all. And as I picked it up, you know that little rattle sound I heard earlier? Multiply it. Multiply it. 60 times. And it was a and I thought, we hadn't taken many out. I took that box out. I went to my car and I went into the store. Now, you want to talk about poor in spirit? I wasn't coming in like, your property, your product is a waste. This is the worst I've ever had. I demand another box. I came in, mister. Anyway, move this in, and I figured, let me try. Let me at least present that I just purchased it. And he looked for it. He pulled out every ball. He said, everyone is cracked. When I do it right. You know? When I mess up, it goes all the way. Everyone. And I said, okay. He said, but you know what? We're going to do this. Just going to give you a whole nother box. Now, I didn't want a box that had one crack in it. And now I had a box that everyone was cracked in it. That's grace, isn't it? I had it all set up that I was going to demand my best. Now I was going to settle. If he gave me one bulb, I'll be happy to go on the left. Thanks, sir, I didn't deserve this bulb. It's worth it. I need another box. Give me a box with the bulb, and I'll be gone. It makes a difference in the context, doesn't it? And so often, as I said, if we come to God and we think we're not that bad, we're the deal, we know we don't deserve clearance status, God got to deal with us, then we'll come and we'll say, God, take whatever you can get. Because the rest is mine. Really, all of it is mine. See if there's anything for you to have. If we realize how much He's done for us, how much He gave us, if we realize that, we do mourn because sin is ever present in our lives and we live in a context of sin, and therefore we lay our lives before Him and say, Lord, have your way. We need to be comforted. If we come before Him and we say, oh God, yes, I can argue, yes, I can push my way, but I need you. I need you. And therefore I need you to work in my life, and we can be gentle in His presence and before Him. If we say, yes, Lord, we hunger and thirst for your righteousness, then we won't come in demanding our way, but saying, Lord, no, you're right. Whatever you desire. Whatever you desire. But it's in the context. It's in the realization. It's in the expectation. He's going to have His way. And if we see ourselves as still in the context of saying, Lord, my life, I can't take my hands off. I got to do with it as I choose. It's all about me. We'll never submit it and realize how great we have it. If you're here today, you've never given your life to Jesus, you may be thinking, well, it's my life. I will make the final choice. It's all about me. And I understand. But can I tell you, you'll never fully realize why that life is yours. Why you've been given the privilege of living if you never give it to God and take your hands off. If you've made a decision sometime in the past and you come before God and you said, Lord, I believe you, I trust it. You had a purpose for me and I gave my life to you. But you have lived life with more your fingerprint on you than God's fingerprint on you. And can I tell you, you'll still never fully realize what God has in store for your life. Because you cannot fully understand it unless you fully let go. Amen. He says, I paid for it all, but you've got to let me have my way. If you're here this morning, I want you to make a decision. You know who you are. And I pray that before you leave, you will choose whether to submit for the first time to give your life to Him. believing that you cannot make life as it should be. You cannot control life and enjoy it for what God desired and gave it to you for. And the only way is by fully again letting go. Or if you said, I trust in you, Jesus, I give my life to you, you'll never realize his joy and desire in calling you to himself. Unless again you let it go. I want to pray for you.